Magic the Gathering's Onslaught block made its continuation with the release of Legions, a 145-card set, on February 2nd, 2003. The second set in the block, it tells the story of a two-sided war between the angel Chroma and her forces on one side, and the ruthless Kabbalist Phage and hers.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Caught in the middle is Kamal, a barbarian-turned-druid who is partially responsible for both sides of the conflict. You can read all about it in J. Robert King's novel, conveniently also titled Legions.
How original.
For those who just don't have the time though, here's a story summary. The beginning of Legions begins right where Onslaught just about left off. Phage is back at the Grand Colosseum of Ophedo, awaiting orders from the Cabal's Patriarch. Kamal has returned to Crozen and is meditating, trying to figure out what his next move will be. Chroma, having discovered her creator, Ixidor, nowhere to be found, having been consumed by one of Phage's deathworms. She assumes control of Topos. Braids, who was gleefully riding on the back of a deathworm before it was absorbed into Phage's body, suffered serious injury from her fall. And the refugees from the joint Cabal-Crozen army happen upon a magnificent yet abandoned city, and, under the leadership of Zagorka and Stonebrow, decide to settle there and establish for themselves a new home. Despite her creator gone, Chroma continues to follow his last order and works towards her goal of killing Phage. She tracks down the deathworm that swallowed Ixidor. Unable to defeat it, she's content to seal it to the ground. Shortly thereafter, the angel happens upon a wounded and feeble Braids and brainwashes her into becoming one of the angel's followers, learning many Cabal secrets in the process. Meanwhile, Phage receives order from the First to locate the refugee city, now called Sanctum, to convince them to the Cabal's side. Like she does with so many cities across Ataria, she sets up gambling operations and begins to corrupt the populace to see things the Cabal way. Stonebrow greatly disapproves, and the giant centaur travels to his old home of Crozen to ask Kamal for assistance. The druid declines, having decided not to interfere, and the centaur returns to Sanctum just in time to see Chroma's arrival. The angel openly declares war on the Cabal, and is able to get the ear of her opponent, Phage. She informs the high-ranking Kabbalist what Braids told her, that Phage is to be the mother of the would-be reincarnated Cabal god, Kubur. Phage then returns to Ophedo. There, she is welcomed back by the First, who considers her a prize promised to her by his Cabal god. After some courtship, the two get down and dirty with one another. Afterwards, however, the First realizes that Phage is immune to his touch. Unaware that by this time she is with child, the Cabal Patriarch plots her murder, though ultimately is unable to succeed in pulling it off. Back in Sanctum, Stonebrow resolves to handle the city's Chroma problem by himself. The giant centaur makes a decision to take on all of Topos on his own, and is predictably overwhelmed. He is brainwashed into becoming a follower of Chroma, and the angel currently indisposed as she is yet again trying to best the deathworm that ate her creator, Ixidor, takes over as the city's leader. Almost immediately, he takes up arms against Sanctum. Sanctum, meanwhile, tries its best to remain neutral. The mysterious glowing glyphs that have appeared across the city, however, tell of an era of great strife, and it is unsettling to the city's inhabitants. Months later, a pregnant Phage takes it upon herself to locate and, if possible, kill Chroma. She first visits Sanctum and finds the broken Kabbalist, Braids. She's rescued, or captured depending on how you look at it, and is escorted back to Ophedo by some of Phage's entourage. Phage then departs for Topos. Meanwhile, Chroma, who is still trying to deal with the deathworm that ate Ixidor, herself gets swallowed by the beast. Trapped inside it, she finds not just the soul of Ixidor's slain love, Nevia, but also Ixidor himself living inside the belly of the beast. Raving, he demands that she leaves. The angel complies. Just as soon as she returns to Topos from being swallowed whole by the deathworm, Phage attacks. Stonebrow also returns and attempts to kill both women, though all he can manage to do to the angel and the Kabbalist is merely injure them. Phage, wounded and weakened by her fast advancing pregnancy, flees back to Ophedo. Chroma resumes control of Topos. Stonebrow, having regained his wits, returns to Sanctum to defend it, unaware that the city's mysterious glyphs have morphed into glass men that have overrun the city, until that its master, Averu, will soon reincarnate as the city itself. Back in Ophedo's Grand Colosseum, the first provides poisoned admission to all of the attendees. As one might expect, they all die, providing the Cabal with a rather sizable undead army with which to attack Chroma and her forces. Shortly thereafter, Phage manages to make it back to the city, though just barely. She gives birth to Kabur almost immediately after her arrival. The first, again, makes numerous attempts to take Phage's life, and each time, the influence of the newly born god protects her. Realizing this, the first separates her from the baby, and then tries to kill her yet again. This time, however, a recovered Braids summons a dementia monster that devours the Cabal Patriarch, ending him once and for all. Phage and Braids then take joint control of the Cabal in Kabur's stead. Meanwhile, two of Ixidor's unmen who had fled from the previous battle rather than returning home to Topos to serve, as well as a third that Chroma had sent after them, encounter Chroma's army. While on their little adventure, the three began to yearn for corporeal bodies of their own. The angel grants the wish to the two deserters, only to kill them once and for all. The third unman jumps in the way of the angel's spear, forcing the other two through his one-time use portal of a body, saving them but killing himself in the process. Back in Sanctum, the glass men who had taken over the city evict or kill all those living in the city. All save for Zagorka, who, as the city's leader, is seen as the mother of their lord, Averu. Once each and every refugee, save for Zagorka, have either been slain or otherwise removed from the city, Averu is reborn, and the city takes sentience. Stonebrow, having been able to escape the slaughter at Sanctum, returns to Croza. There he finds an almost mummified Kamal, the druid still in deep meditation after all this time. He rouses him, and this time, is able to convince Kamal to take yet another try at slaying Chroma and Phage. Back in Ophedo, Kabur tells Phage that she must go to battle against Chroma with the city's large undead army, as every death the Cabal causes will age him one day, drastically accelerating his growth and maturity. Obedient to the young god of the Cabal, she goes on the march with a vast army behind her. Chroma too is on the move, and the two forces meet at Sanctum, which has become a rather twisted reflection of its former self, thanks to the rebirth of Averu. There, the forces of Ophedo and those of Topos fight without mercy, with the chaos and bloodshed not just helping to better grow Kabur, but Averu as well, as they make up 2/3 of the Numena, a trio of powerful mages of ancient times who each slew one of Dominaria's primeval dragons, absorbing their godlike powers in doing so. With the battle in its full fury, Kamal, Stonebrow, and a handful of Crozens arrive at Sanctum. They fight their way to where Chroma and Phage are battling. Zagorka, imprisoned in a tower room just above where the two women are fighting, decides to commit suicide mid-battle and jumps from her tower window. Kamal, wielding the Soul Reaper axe that was created specifically to slay the angel Chroma, takes a mighty swing at both her and Phage. Zagorka's body crashes down on the two women just as the Soul Reaper strikes its mark, killing all three of them in one fell swoop. The result is both unexpected and disastrous. Between the Soul Reaper's own power and the combined souls of the three slain women, Chroma, Phage, and Zagorka, a being who calls herself Corona is created, telling the battlefield,
"Behold Oteria! Behold Dominaria! I am Corona! I am magic!"
As will be discovered in the third and final chapter of the Onslaught block, she will be the scourge of the entire plane.
I see what you did there. Puns.
But that'll be for another video, as there's still more yet to tell about Legions.
Please, continue.
As mentioned earlier, Legions is the middle set in the 3-set Onslaught block. As such, it takes the themes and mechanics of the first set, Onslaught, and progresses them, such as with morph creatures and cycling. The set also introduced 3 new ones. Amplify, which is an ETB-triggered creature ability that allows its controller to reveal creature cards that share a creature type with the card played in order to add a specific number of +1/+1 counters to it. Double Strike, a now evergreen ability that allows a creature to deal both first strike and normal combat damage. And Provoke, a keyword static ability inspired by the Stronghold card of the same name, which can force a specific creature to block it during combat. Though those 3 new abilities weren't even the most notable thing about Legions. That honor would go to the fact that Legions was a set comprised 100% by creatures. No instants, sorceries, artifacts, none of that.
So where did that idea come from? And so the idea was, what if we could do a set with the gimmick being every single card's a creature? Now it turns out there's not a lot of things that every card could be. Creatures happens to be one of them.
To get around the set not having any non-creatures, a number of the set's creatures had abilities that triggered either upon entering the battlefield, upon morphing, or upon death. Goblin Assassin, Echo Tracer, and Celestial Gatekeeper, respectively, are all examples of this. Furthermore, Saboteur creatures such as Dripping Dead and cycling creatures like those in the Gem Palm cycle also help to handicap the set's creature-only composition. Legions also continued Onslaught's tribal themes, carrying over not just those of the first set like Goblins and Clerics, but also ones not just new to the block, but the plane of Dominaria overall.
Slivers got added. So for those who don't know, Slivers were originally created by Mike Elliott in a set he made before he came to Wizards. Mike's set was called Afterways. And in his story, there was a creature that fell from the heavens and broke into many pieces, and the slivers were all slivers of, or pieces of, this one greater person. We ended up putting in Tempest, we adapted to the Tempest story, so slivers in Magic ended up becoming, they are shape-changing creatures that share a hive mind. So slivers got added, there are a bunch of slivers in the set.
The set featured 3 mono-colored cycles of slivers, which were either 1/1s, 2/2s, or 3/3s depending on rarity, and, being slivers, had abilities that it confers to all slivers, just like they did when the creature type was introduced in the Tempest block years earlier. And why slivers? Well, largely independent from the main storyline is the Riptide Project, which is private research being done by the Mer Empire. Some old fossils were found in Urborg and brought to the Empire's Riptide Laboratory for research. The researchers then began to replicate these strange, almost alien creatures using the lab's replicator. But, unbeknownst to them, without a sliver queen to command the sliver's hive mind, they went berserk and wrecked the place. You'll find a tease of slivers in the Onslaught card Riptide Replicator, and finally a new sliver lord in the next set, Scourge, in the form of Sliver Overlord. Getting back to Legion specifically, the set also features 3 other mono-colored cycles. Gem Palms, which are creatures with tribal cycling triggered abilities. Invokers, which are creatures that each have a powerful ability that costs a whopping 8 mana, 7 generic plus 1 of that creature's color. And Muses, perhaps the most popular and powerful cycle of creatures in the set. Each Muse has a powerful but unusual ability. Seedboard Muse and Windboard Muse are both considered to be the best in the cycle, though arguments have been made for Dreamborn Muse as well, thanks to its milling ability.
It's actually really powerful.
Despite not having any non-creature spells, Legions boasts a handful of notable cards, with arguably 4 having quite the impact on the tournament scene. White Knight, an OG Magic card that hadn't seen print since 5th edition, made its return and was a key card in White Weenie strategies. Goblin Goon, a 6/6 4-drop with a drawback, the card found a home in the powerful Goblin tribal decks of the time as the deck's only big beater. Caller of the Claw, which is a 2/2 elf with flash that can create an immediate army. It often saw inclusion in World Gorger decks as an alternate win condition, and was a common inclusion in sideboards as an answer to Wrath of God and other board sweepers. And, of course, a Chroma, Angel of Wrath, a 6/6 legendary creature with a whopping 7 keyword abilities. Despite her high casting cost of 8 mana, she was quite popular thanks to her durability and reputation for being a late game finisher. But despite her popularity, not everyone was a fan.
I did not like this card. Now let me explain why. It's not, so this is what we call a kitchen sink card, which means it's just a creature that has lots of keywords on it. I'm not against kitchen sink cards. My problem was, there's a story to a Chroma. You know, she very much there's things that she was supposed to do in the story, and I felt like we were just giving her, like, okay, yeah, she does stuff, but where does it match the story? And I really was trying to give her an ability that I thought would be more story appropriate. But I got outvoted.
In addition to those 4 hugely impactful cards, Legions also featured a handful of others of note, such as Crozen Cloud Scraper, a 13/13 creature that was the largest overall non-token creature in all of Magic until the set Rise of the Eldrazi introduced the 15/15 Emrakul the Aeon's Torn. The quote, every creature type, Mistform Ultimist, that inspired the Changeling creatures that would be introduced years later in the Loran block, Phage the Untouchable, and Timberwatch Elf, a common creature that has seen play not just in EDH Elf tribal decks, but in competitive ones as well. And like with Onslaught before it, the set's pre-release promo, Feral Throwback, saw nearly no play despite it featuring 2 of the set's novel abilities.
And right now I'm 0 for 2.
So is Legions among your favorite Magic the Gathering sets? If so, let us know in the comments section below. And be sure to subscribe to Magic Untapped on YouTube, and please throw a buck in our tip jar on Patreon for more great Magic the Gathering content.